Never bargain with a man who has nothing to lose. Sayings of the Fool. Thenis Buell. Hello, and welcome to the Legendarium Green Team's Malazan series. Welcome to episode 2 of the Bonehunters series. I am Befuddled Panda, and I'm joined by Huron Fan.
Hello!
Yesna as a boy.
Hey.
And Ashamon.
Hello.
Huron Fan and Ashamon are the Malazan veterans. Yesna and I are reading the series for the first time. However, Yesna has ditched me in the dust and already finished the Bonehunters.
And now Reaper's Gale.
And apparently Reaper's Gale. I'm sorry, I'm so slow.
It's not you, it's the podcast schedule.
That is also true.
And it's just my life. I started to hate reading, so I had to change things up.
Yeah. Well, today we are covering Bonehunters chapters 6 through 9, and everything up through these chapters is fair game for discussion. We will be using our usual chapter-by-chapter format. So, this was an exciting section to read. Very intense.
Yeah.
But let's start with chapter 6. Who's got the chapter 6 summary?
I have the chapter 6 summary.
Hit it.
Chapter 6. Leomin arranges a chat with the Queen of Dreams as he makes his final preparations for Yugotin. Tavor decides upon a risky strategy. Ganos and Apsalar part ways. Kalam turns out to be bad at climbing skykeeps, and Mappo gets distracted by a couple of dogs. That Mappo.
Mm-hmm.
That Trell. Honestly, I have the same reaction when dogs come say hi to me. I completely ditch my traveling companions as well. Just kind of cuddle with them for a while. Someone finds me passed out in a crevasse later.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hell of an ending that we didn't get answers to for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, our schedule kind of put it in a weird place, because it's like at the beginning instead of at the end where it is if you just read the book like it's structured. And that ending, especially when you know, because I knew ahead of time that chapter 7 was going to be all about the Siege of Yugotin, it's just like it was such a cliffhanger, and I was so upset. And I knew chapter 7 would be even more upsetting, and I was just like, what a prologue to chapter 7. Like, what a way to just drive everything. By the way, the way that is this the chapter where all the different groups are like, something's coming. Oh, we got to move our campsite because something's coming. Karsa draws his sword and he's like, oh, there's something coming. Is this the chapter where that happens? Or is this
Yeah, I think so.
is that the... Yeah,
Maybe.
so...
I don't know, we can talk about it now anyways.
It was either in the previous chapter that we talked about last episode and we didn't talk about it, or it was this chapter. But in either case, I expected them all to converge with the Troll Brawl when that kept happening, and then it was just Mappo and Akarium, and I don't really understand like what the payoff for everybody saying that was supposed to be, like, even now, having read all 4 of these chapters.
I gotta be honest, I don't remember that.
If I had to guess, it was just kind of like Yugotin paying off, like, forward through time, essentially. You know how in Watchmen there's a big deal made about tachyons and they propagate forwards and backwards through time? I think it was just kind of like that, and like a big foreboding in the 7 cities that people of a spiritual nature could sense.
I got a question for everybody else. I love Mappo and Akarium, and the last 2 books, I think, that we've had Mappo and Akarium in the book, they were barely in it. So I'm just wondering if, like, you still had that love that I have for them, even though we haven't seen them basically in 3 books.
I'll be honest with you. No.
Did you like them in Deadhouse Gates?
I did. But, like, for the most part of these 4 chapters that we read, like, the Mappo Akarium sections were the most boring.
I think that Mappo had a decisive moment in Deadhouse Gates, and up until now, he's essentially like he hasn't been able to come to grips with that, and like that moment has directly led to this one. So, to me, his character hasn't really been going anywhere since then. He's just kind of
Yeah.
been sad because he's realized like his thing with Ikariam had already effectively ended, and now it's just like an official separation.
I was distraught when he fell down the crevasse.
Me too. I still cared. Of course, I read Deadhouse Gates 3 times. Might affect that, you build a lot more rapport with the character that way.
I mean, I think for me it was like getting a bit tiring because it was very repetitive.
Yeah, I agree. And so maybe that's why they were used so sparingly between Deadhouse and this, and
Yeah.
because it was like there wasn't much development, and you had like up till this point in this book, you had like the Kachane Jamal stuff or Kachane Rook stuff or whatever to like keep them doing something while their arcs stayed stagnant up to this moment.
They were more interesting when there were other characters interacting with them. When it was just the two of them, it was very repetitive. So like in Midnight Tides? No, yes. When
They weren't in Midnight Tides.
when House of Chains, when Karsa Orlong like was interacting with Akari and Mappo. That was interesting.
That was
But
the
then-
only scene they were in that book too, I think.
I think there's one others, but yeah, it was sparse.
I think the most disappointing thing by far in this section is that prior to this, Mappo took out his bag of holding, and he took out like a regular old mace, and he's like, I don't need any of my magic weapons right now. And he just doesn't use a magic weapon when he's fighting this god being. And that's very disappointing to me. I want to see what kind of stuff Mappo has.
In his bag of holding.
Is this teasing us for the future of what Mappo will do?
I mean, there is a Chekhov's gun set up there. I'm not going to tell you whether or not it pays off, because Steve doesn't always like to follow tropes.
Yes.
I know this is from the previous section, but I don't think anybody mentioned it. I really liked the gag where they're going to climb down, and Mappo like stuffs his bigger bags into smaller bags of holding until he has it down to like the fanny pack of holding. Thought that was hilarious, and I loved it.
Loop bags of holding.
Yeah, I think that was this section actually.
I don't think so.
No,
They weren't exploring
no,
a
because
sky
it was
here.
before they went down to find the Kachane fortress. Anyway.
If it's okay to move on, I want to talk about Bent and Roach and how much I love them and would die for them.
Yeah.
You would die for a couple of dogs? You fool!
Absolutely. Bent, I love. Kenneth gives a very, very long description of Bent and Roach, and it's not positive, but at the same time, it's just I love them so much. And at one point, what happens? Roach. Who does Roach pee on? Was it Kenneth's
Kenneth,
boot?
yeah.
Yes.
Just like that dog, the goal.
He's just marking his territory.
Yeah, Kenneth just happens to be part of his territory. Her, I actually think.
Or her.
Yeah.
Okay, in this section, we do see the dead dragon, Sorit.
Mm-hmm.
And Sorit was part of, I guess, they were aspected to Cirque.
Mm-hmm.
And something is happening where, like, somebody is killing off all of the main creatures.
Yeah, the dragons
What?
seem to be aspected to Warrens, or Warrens seem to be aspected to dragons.
Yeah.
And they had some deal with Cruel.
And Osirk is now the only guy who's aspected to Cirque. That's interesting, isn't it?
Like
Whenever this guy shows up in
anyone?
the story.
But, like, anyone alive? Or
Any of the
just
dragons.
any of the... Yeah.
Yeah.
The Elaint, specifically.
Okay. The pure
He's not
dragon.
even light. He's a Teist Leosin.
Yes, he is. But he has Elaine blood.
Because he's... Wait. Osric is Loric's father.
Yeah, he's kind
Correct.
of the mirror to Anomander.
Okay. And if I remember correctly, Lorik is the son of Queen of Dreams and no.
No, I
I
don't
don't
know
think
if we
we know
know
his.
Lorik's mother.
Oh, I
I
thought
think
we
he
did.
he spoke to Osark about it
Yeah.
when they met, but I don't remember.
I wouldn't be
Maybe.
surprised if it was the Queen of Dreams. Like
Yeah,
it's entirely
definitely could
possible
be.
it's mentioned
Actually,
in
that you're saying that.
Yeah, Triss gets around sexually and physically and figuratively. Um, speaking of character arcs that ended a long time ago and are just kind of being brought to the fore now, Tavor figures out that Dujek is essentially just kind of like a dead man walking, and One Arm's host is, it seems, not going to recover from Black Coral. That's
She
interesting.
doesn't even
isn't it?
know the guy. And Keneb seems impressed by her ability to read the
Fiddler
room,
seems
so to
impressed.
speak. It was
Fiddler.
Keneb speaking to
Yeah.
Fiddler.
Kenna was like, "What do you think of this?" And Fiddler's like, she's better at reading people than I thought."
Yes.
Well, and she kept that to herself, through however long. She's probably known it since House of Chains. And we don't get it till she tells it to her fist. And it's like, you choose what to do with this information now that you've been hiding it.
Yes.
And only Keneb, too.
Yeah, just one fist.
She doesn't trust very many people, and
No,
yeah.
it's also very dangerous information because, like Kenna or Fiddler points out, when she doesn't tell people, her soldiers can just get angry at her. They still have
Right.
Dujek to look up to, and if they learn that Dujek is essentially just a broken man, like who do they get to have faith in?
Right. Not the Empress.
No, I'm a Lazine apologist, but you cannot have faith in Lazine. She's not inspiring.
No.
I'm going to go out and say something, and I think you'll agree with me. The most interesting person in this chapter is Korab.
This is the chapter where I started warming up to Korab.
He does have a big
Yeah.
helmet.
He's hilarious. First of all, like, he just keeps on giving titles to Liam,
Liam.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's got the helmet, and the helmet's funny. He has some really interesting internal monologue.
Yes. Which I was like, is this platonic loyalty, homoerotic? Like,
I think he's got romantic feelings or some sort of entanglement with Liam. And
I think
I-
he's just a religious zealot, but I understand the homoerotic angle.
I think that it's not. I think that it's ambiguous and it's left up to the reader to decide.
So I want to read something because I think it's hilarious. He would have to watch her carefully, hand on the grip of his new cutlass, ready at a moment's notice, and cut her clean in half, head to crotch, then across diagonally twice. Swish, swish, right shoulder, left hip, lift shoulder, right hip, and watch her part ways, a duty-bound execution. Yes, the first hit of betrayal. So he's thinking about Dunsparrow, right? And I just love how childish this seems, and also the fact that he has a new cutlass.
doesn't
Which
he
he
keep
almost
losing?
immediately loses in the actual.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a list of like all of the weapons that Korab has lost. And
He goes through them. He transfers all of his bad luck into his weapons, and he's just left with good luck.
That's a interesting way to view it. I'd buy that.
It's like just the Jewish faith. Back in the old times, they would put all of the sins of the community onto a lamb, and then they would send that lamb out into the wilderness. It might not have been a lamb, but you get the idea.
Yeah, there were birds and all. Yeah. Anyway, the Korab piece, like I did like seeing the transition from like in these chapters that we read, right? Like in this chapter when he is hating Dunsparrow and he just sees her as being a Malazan soldier, even though she betrayed the Malazan Empire. But Dunsparrow herself doesn't see herself as Malazan. She's like, I was born on Quantali, like that's my people. And Korab was like so confused. He's like, what? Like Malazans are Malazans. Like you're all the same. Doesn't matter the hue of your skin, the tilt of your eyes, like no matter your variations, you're all Malazans. And then we see that transition, that growth for Korra throughout, well, particularly chapter 7, where, he realizes, oh, there's more to
He,
Malazans than just the Empire.
he becomes an
During that
actual
And,
scene,
human being.
Yeah.
and they don't eat babies.
They don't eat babies.
so far, uh, during that scene, all I could imagine is, but steel is heavier than feathers. It's just like the guy cannot get it through his head that the Malazan is made up of different people.
Yeah, it's like a very common thing to do in North America, especially in Canada. Just to think of like the Native Americans were here before we came, and they're just like one homogenous people, right? And they lived with the
Right.
land, and they're very in tune with it. And no,
America's a
that's
big
just not
place.
the case. Yeah, there was like thousands of tribes, and they all had very distinct. Well, they had distinct cultures, although there were cultural similarities, of course.
Which
Yeah.
is kind of ironic because, like in relation to Korra, because I'm sure he would be able to tell the difference between all the different tribes of 7 cities. But then when he looks at the Malazans, he's like, no, they're all Malazans.
Yeah.
When you start thinking of people as the other, it just becomes like an amorphous
A
blob.
homogenous. Yeah.
Usually. Yeah.
It's like AP told us.
Damn foreigners.
I think you mean Irish.
So I recently learned something that seemed relevant to a part in this chapter where it was Keneb and Temel and like Gaul. They were talking about like strategy, right? What to do about Yagaten. And Keneb's like asking Temel for his thoughts on what strategy they should use. And Temel was like very he was still upset that Coltane had sent him away during the chain of dogs. And he was like, well, because Keneb was like, oh, you have the influence of Coltane. And Temel was like, yeah, well, he sent me away, blah, blah, blah. And what I had recently learned about rear admirals is, like a rear admiral in the Navy, is like where their placement is, like why are they called a rear admiral? So in the Navy, like when you're going to battle, the fleet is split up into 3 sections. And so you have one for the admiral, one for the vice admiral, and one for the rear admiral. The vice admiral is the one that goes in the front, and then it's the admiral, and then the rear admiral. And the reason is because like the vice admiral and the admiral are supposed to be more experienced in battle and fighting, and the rear admiral is the more junior one, and so they're behind to be protected. And when Keneb was like thinking about Temel, he was like, Coltane haunts you still, Temel. Coltane sent you with Duiker to keep you alive, not to punish you or shame you. Like, why don't you accept that? And I was like, oh, Temel was the rear admiral. He's the junior, and Coltane and his other leaders like took the brunt of it.
Thanks. That's
It's a
cool.
good
Didn't know
observation.
that.
Yeah.
I really am growing to love Temel a lot. And he had a great line. The first casualty among the defeated is recalling their own list of crimes.
Yep.
Yep. It's like, oh, we're victims. We didn't do anything.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that humans really like to simplify things.
Yes.
And in doing so, you lose so much nuance, especially when like your side is the victims. It's hard to have a balanced take there where it's you can both sympathize with them and criticize them for their own failings, especially since humans tend to root for the underdogs, just as a byproduct of our nature.
So we got from Tavor in her own words, basically her philosophy on command. What do you think about that?
Can you remind me?
Command does not come from consensus. I deliver the orders, and my officers are to obey them. They should be relieved, and that is the case, for all responsibility lies with me and me alone. No one else shall have to answer to the Empress.
The buck stops here. I really like Tavor. I think if I would just make a criticism of her command style, I'd just make it like a bit more obvious when she takes advice from other people, because I think like it's entirely possible that she didn't have a plan for Yugatan, and then just like, oh, Temel's idea is good, let's just use that. But yeah, she's very much just focus all your hatred on me. This is fine. I can take it. I will assume all the responsibility for our failings, and she
Like
doesn't really take credit for the successes either.
Yeah,
interesting.
very self-sacrificing.
It's noble in a way, but irritating for people below her.
I still I think Coltane's style is more my style, because he's still, he had everyone airing their ideas, and then he was like, all right, now here's what the fuck's gonna happen. Whereas she just like doesn't even do it, like he still like has the town hall, and then he's like, all right, now we're gonna do it my way based on hearing all of you. And in the process, he like was able to like draw out like who's who and who's with me and who's like less reliable and who's a useless traitor and who can I manipulate during this town hall. And he was able to like use that consensus process, but then he still makes all the command decisions and all the responsibility falls on him. So it's just like it's like a slight tweak of hers, but I think it's in a better. I prefer Coltane's command style personally.
I do think Coltane is more charismatic, but I also think it's important to remember that Coltane was like an already established Giga war leader before this happened, and he already had this cadre of people around him who he could trust, and he had his, he had his Wiccans, and they all knew him. They knew who he was. And Tavor doesn't really have that. She just kind of like came out of nowhere. So
yes.
But how is she going to
need to
develop that?
Yeah.
Noble.
Through winning, I assume. But yeah, she does need to emphasize that she's the one in charge, and she can't have people usurping her authority. So it's a tough balance to watch. I don't think she does it perfectly, but
I think she kind of, it's this vicious cycle that she what's the word, perpetuates, because I think her personality, just like personality wise, the two of them are very different. And even though there's not really as much sexism in this world, I still wonder like if her being a woman has anything to do with why she feels like she has to be the way she is. But it's also like, because she doesn't change how she interacts with her subordinates, she feels like she has to continue like this image of I am stoic and I know what I'm doing, and she can't be vulnerable, and and then her subordinates are upset with her because they don't feel like she trusts them, and yeah, it just continues.
it would be very nice if she had a bolt, someone like that who could just who knows her precisely, and who is a hard as nails person that can just kind of lay it out there for other people and take the flack from her subordinates that like generally should be reserved for her. Like Bolt was like, he was the jerk that Coltane needed a lot of the time.
I do wonder if like Fiddler could kind of fill that. Keneb kind of fills that
little bit,
role.
but like Keneb is also like super inexperienced, right? Like he was, yeah.
But I would like to see Fiddler. I don't know. Maybe there's a Tavor Fiddler.
Fiddler and the other experienced sergeants are kind of doing that in the low level for her.
Yeah.
But
That
not in
would
the
be-
same way.
So, I think that also her being from a noble house impacts the way that she's acting, because she wants to like not come off as being like this corrupt, person that just got promoted because of her blood and is like a complete fop and useless. So she's like extremely rugged and has like she makes no attempt at fashion, and she's just like, she got the cropped hair, and she's stoic and she's stern, and she's like trying to be like, no, I'm a serious soldier, because I'm not like. And then on top of it, there's Ganois, and his like as far as she knows, I'm pretty sure because Fiddler and her haven't had that conversation. Neither has Quickbin, neither has Kalam about what happened with her brother. She just thinks he like defected or something.
He was a traitor.
Like, yeah, so like she's got that like as part of her house's reputation.
That's true.
And she hasn't like and you mentioned Fiddler, and I think the problem with that idea is that she would have to drag Fiddler kicking and screaming into that role because
I know.
he has that old guard mentality of like all the Malazan old guard, which is like, don't promote me, don't promote me, don't promote me, don't notice me. You know, so
does Pores.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yep.
please don't promote me.
Yeah.
I love kindly and Pores.
And
I
of course,
agree with
Stormy
you.
and Gessler. We've gone backwards.
I agree with you, Panda, but from a different perspective. So, even if this Malazan culture isn't steeped in sexism like our world is, the author at the very least is. So Erickson is going to be writing her from the perspective, wanting to give off this maybe a perspective that maybe a woman in that position in our world might have to go through or take.
I have a
into
question.
consideration.
If Tavor were a male character, would we talk about that character as much?
I think she would just come across differently in a lot of ways, because Coltane does have a lot of her mannerisms. Like, he does not explain himself very much, right? Like, he just comes in and he tells people what to do a lot of the times, and then sometimes he listens, but a lot of the times he just leaves, or he just makes no indication that he's listened to what they're saying, and like insults them or whatever.
Although he uses his like core group to then communicate everything outward. Like, they'll like pull Duiker where they want him. They'll tell the sappers where they need to be to like influence the plan, and so that it all kind of still comes together and everybody knows. Like, everybody who needs to know knows.
I would say that Tavor is relying on her sergeants to do that because she knows who they are.
But is
it's
that
more
portrayed?
passive, right?
Yeah,
it
I
is
feel
more
like that's
passive, and it's a
portrayed.
lot less. There's a lot less communication between Devore and her sergeants. But someone in House of Chains, I think, said that, oh yeah, the command structure is kind of it's kind of reversed, and the sergeants are exactly where they need to be on the low levels so that they can make the tactical decisions that they need to, because the army is very inexperienced.
Okay, I'm bored with talking about Tavor now.
Yeah, we can move on.
Yeah, I want to move to.
Kalam gets to climbing, and then he gets tired of climbing, and then he calls on Cotillion, who is a very responsive god. Good job, Cotillion.
My favorite part of that was how Kalam's initial thoughts are like, maybe the Skykeep is magic proof, and it's just that Quickbin like fell down. But his initial thinking is like, oh, the magic doesn't work up here, and maybe it's the Skykeep, and he's like trying to approach it from like this metaphysical, like doesn't understand magic, trying to get it perspective, and then he's like, wait, Cotillion, why is your magic working? And he's like, oh, Quickbin's just passed out down there.
Yeah.
Like, what actually happened
dead.
with Quickbin and was it Stormy? Or how did they fall?
I think there's like a cave-in, basically.
Oh, because like
the
one moment,
temple- the temple roof that they were
Just
on just
collapsed.
collapsed. Like, they didn't even know they were on a temple roof. It was like dirt and turf.
Okay.
And it was over this hollow temple, and it happened off screen, but
Yeah.
that's how I imagined it.
I think this little mini arc that Kalam and Quickben have here is just a lesson on not overcomplicating the situation. Like, this is jumping ahead a bit, but it turns out Stormy has the brilliant idea. They don't need to go in the Skykeeps. The Skykeeps are right there. They've stopped.
I like
Why
You
are we
already
trying to
know
get
what's
in there?
in it.
You don't know why you're wanting to get in there. It's just nonsense. Let's just go back to...
Let's get out of here.
Yeah, so I think it's entirely possible the cave-in is just a cave-in. They are just, they're just
Okay.
making a mountain out of a molehill here.
All right.
Yeah, I like that. I like Stormy's kind of takedown of like the questing adventurer trope in that way. He's like, oh, you think you have to do all this stuff, but you really don't.
But
like,
you really
You've
don't.
accomplished your mission,
Yeah.
He's like an enlightened murder hobo.
What I enjoyed most about that section were just Kalam and Cotillian's interactions and just Cotillion running with it. Just very casual, very human.
He's the kind of god that we all want, right? Like, he's very chill. He shows up when you ask for help, and he's just
I was
willing to
nearby.
talk about his own failings. Yep.
And when
Okay,
he steals people's entire lives and continues to do so, he feels bad about it.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, yeah, I'm going to use you, but I'm not going to feel good about it.
A little more serious, but not really. Nefarious bread. This is like
Nefarious bread.
is this the longest running joke in this whole series?
Why do you think it's a
Don't know what you're
joke?
talking about. He's just really cool.
He doesn't
That-
exist, right?
I'm-
Like that's the gag, right?
What?
Is nefarious
I mean,
bread like
people
a
that talk
cockroach
about
or
him-
something?
No, it's like, okay, but before you read Malazan, you hear about these characters, and like, you're like, oh, Animanarake is so cool, and you hear all about, you don't know Animanarake, right?
Sure.
It's all built up until you actually get to meet him.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now, do you
and-
think we're
and-
actually gonna meet nefarious bread by the end of this series?
I don't know. Maybe that's the punchline of the crippled god. Is like nefarious bread's just there at the end.
Smiles
And
saw
you thought
him
he was
the other
fake
day.
Yeah,
That was really
right.
cool.
I wish oh, man. Okay.
Should we take a wager? Listeners, take a wager.
Take a wager for us. Yeah. I'll on my first read through, I actually didn't even register the talking about nefarious bread.
Oh,
I went
It's like
almo-
everywhere.
Yeah. No, I was not I was not reading it super attentively all the time, and like
Fair,
it's
fair.
possible I processed that nefarious bread was mentioned, but I probably didn't connect the dots because he hasn't shown up on page yet.
Yet.
Yeah.
last thing I'll put out there is so Bottle like sees a premonition or something through
Oh, the
whatever that.
aerosol.
Yeah.
Aerosol.
Like
Just-
there's
just
a child
wait.
to come, the only pure candidate for a new throne of shadow, a throne commanding a healed realm.
Yeah. You know who the child is, right?
It's do I?
So
Are you?
Is it Grub?
That's it.
I had thoughts about this actually. A couple
Wait,
of
child to
things.
come.
So, aerosol, I don't really understand the mechanics of aerosol.
I don't
it
either.
seems like she can like flit in and out of time at different points, and like cause and effect aren't necessarily in linear order with the aerosol. So like I'm not clear as to whether the baby that she's currently carrying
Right.
is Troll's kid or someone else. I know that I think that in Midnight Tides we were told that Kettle was a child of the aerosol. And my initial thoughts then was like,
Oh.
is that Troll's kid? But then Ash and Huron, I don't know if this was a red herring, but they pointed out that she's not Teist, she's human. So then I was like, okay, maybe not. And now I'm wondering if like she ends up getting knocked up by Bottle at some point later in the series and Kettle's Bottle's kid. I don't know. I wasn't even going to bring this up, but you guys like highlighted it. So I was just like, what the hell? Yeah, I don't know. I don't have it. There's no theory here. It's just like I'm just shooting at the wall and seeing that nothing is sticking. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this?
No comment.
Yeah, no comment.
Obviously, you can't comment.
Actually, one comment. If listeners are curious, the idea that time isn't just a series of causes and effects is called B theory, and it's a very interesting philosophical idea. It has an idea like time is a flat circle. It's
Chapter
just another
7.
dimension. Yeah.
I have no theory. I don't know. I just want to know more about Grub.
This is the
Yeah,
part where
that's fair.
Huron's going to tell us that we'll find out more about Grub in the novels of the Malazan Empire.
I'll be honest. You're not
Not so
going to
far,
find
actually.
out everything about everybody in this. There's gonna be mysterious characters show up. There's gonna be mysterious characters
I
who have shown
know.
up. You're just not gonna find out what's going on there.
I
We
know.
Alright.
know that he becomes the first sword of the Empire, right?
That's true. For sort of the late Empire.
From an epigraph.
I forgot about that. All right, let's move on to chapter 7, the beast of a chapter. Who's got the summary?
I do. Leoman of the Flails invites the 14th Army to a barbecue, and some Marines go spelunking.
It's true. That's what happens.
Sounds yummy.
Unfortunately, he forgot to tell them to bring their own meat. So they have to make do with what they have.
Oh my god, that's dark.
My first note is poor stupid Crump. How do y'all feel about Crump?
I was gonna ask that.
He's a dangerous lunatic. He got a lot of them killed.
Why
no
this
reason.
character?
He's
Why
one of the
does
Bull
this
Brothers.
character exist?
He's from Mott.
What's the freaking
Because the
point?
mod irregulars are this long-running joke, and
He's a high marshal.
I'm sure they're from like the D&D campaigns or something, but they're hilarious.
I think he's an interesting character. I honestly feel bad for him, but at the same time, I'm just so angry at him.
Yeah, I like how the comic relief it really bites them, because he's not just an idiot; he's a very dangerous idiot, and he did
Yes.
get a lot of sappers and Marines killed.
Yes.
Yeah, Erickson
And he
is really
survived.
good at intertwining comic relief with like tragic elements, where they're like, yeah, you could be like on top of each other, like laughing, tears in your eyes, back to laughing.
Yes. Or
It's-
both at the same time.
And that's why I feel bad every time I laugh at Hellion. Ha 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 ha, alcoholism.
Yeah.
Manageable alcoholism. Here. Come on, she's a social drug.
I
Is
love how
she?
she like.
No, she's not. She has a problem.
I love how she like is totally competent when it comes to battle.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
she
what-
sobers
what-
right up.
Times.
Yeah, I love that about her. You know, like, yeah, there are
I
just
don't like
people
her.
out there who are totally facetious a lot of the times, and then when stuff hits the fan, then they just kind of can very comfortably assume the role of command, or just slot right in.
Her subordinates think highly of her. Or at least Herb.
I mean,
Herb
Herb does. But Herb has never served under anybody else. So it's
point.
like,
She got him out alive, out of this alive. So that's pretty.
She did get
is it
along
really
with
her or is it more him?
Well,
Well,
she
she's the
took
one that-
command, and she
Yeah.
led them through the city,
Until she had to
essentially.
go underground, it was all her.
And
Okay,
then he
fair.
knocked her out because of her crippling
Spiders.
arachnophobia.
Oh my goodness.
Fuels her alcoholism.
This
Like,
was a
when
very
I'm-
hard chapter to read for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Bobble
Not
does
just
get
because
crawled
of the
all over
death
by
and
spiders.
stuff, but like claustrophobia and creepy crawlies. Ugh,
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
no.
When I met this character in the prologue, I certainly did not think she would be back to play such this huge role like right away. I was just like, oh, what? That was a fun character. We'll never see her again.
Uh-huh.
You know.
Wait,
And
is the Bonehunters the book where you guys say it's like 2 books in one, or is that a different one? Okay. Because I did realize like in the previous chapter when they were talking about their strategy and what they were going to do with Yurgatan, it was like, oh no, we're just going to go and we're going to attack. None of this like long drawn out siege thing. And then when we got into chapter 7, I was like, okay, typically this would be like a climax for a regular book,
Mm-hmm.
but we're getting it a lot sooner. So I was like, well, what's going to happen for the rest
You'll
of the
find
book?
out.
I think Erickson has undersold how ridiculous, how much just awesome is packed into this book. Because I think it's 3 books in one. But this
3?
is the end of the first of them. Yes.
3. Oh,
Oh,
interesting.
freaking goodness.
Yeah, we can talk about that at the end. But yeah,
Okay.
there's a major tonal shift later that I think justifies saying that this is kind of a new thing. But
Okay.
I'd like to talk about Korab.
Okay.
Of course you do. That's. I think that's just the drum you're banging this episode. Can we talk about Korab now?
I'm going to be talking about Korab until...
Until Korab dies?
I'm not saying anything.
Until Korab retires happily with a
Sure.
beautiful wife and
So
I think
several
he's gonna have an
thousand gold
epic death.
pieces.
I'm sure Huron knows this already, but I don't know. Ash, do you listen to Tim Very Big Books?
No.
So Erickson was going to kill Korab off in this chapter. And he said that something held him back. And he said, like, when you get that feeling, you have to follow it and, like, see where it's going to take you. So this was all, like, unplanned. All this direction that Korab went here after this point.
I'd like to see Steve have a chat with Vince Gilligan from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Because Vince Gilligan does that a lot. And I have a feeling they could produce a very interesting conversation.
So, Korab has quite the arc. He learns to love the Malazans. He finds humanity in them. He saves
becomes
the
a
children.
dad to these children.
He rejects the fanaticism that he
does.
was wed to all of his life.
That's strength. And I cried from a lot of his lines, especially
when
he's found all the children.
It was kind of forced on him, but it is still an excellent thing when people are able to do that.
And he saved our favorite character, Fiddler.
Yeah, he did save Fiddler. Good job, Korab.
Even though he could have thrown him out, and everybody thought he did too.
Honestly, until you said that here, and I didn't connect completely, but I just realized I had a similar arc to Korab in my real life. Like abandoning a previous fanaticism. I've had it like twice, actually. Sometimes you replace it with another fanaticism and you don't even realize it. But
That's what Korab's doing. Yep. He's going to get really into rescuing orphans.
well, okay, that's not that bad. I think you could be a fanatic about that.
Oh, anything could be bad if you take it to its logical extreme.
Korab and
You have to have orphans to save them, right?
Oh no.
Oh god, no.
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 Korab and Kalam can like go and bond, you know.
Oh yeah, they can bond over the hundreds of children Kalam has right now. Yeah.
Kalam, absentee father extraordinaire.
Hey, Manala's got it, right?
I think last time we talked to Steve, right, he said he will kill off a character he doesn't like their name, but he was thinking about killing off Korab Bilanthenwalis.
That's probably what saved Korab.
So like Erickson didn't know like what it was that kept him from killing Korab. He just had a gut feeling.
Yeah, that's what he said.
I think Steve's a very intuitive person.
I thought the bit that Huron just referenced was in the Tim Very Big Books interview, but maybe not.
Maybe he did.
We'll just take credit for their interviews from now on. Steve told us. No one will notice.
What else happened in this? There are a lot. Oh, okay. I mean, so there was something that was a bit annoying about this chapter. There was so much switching of perspectives, and it was like,
it's chaotic, right?
I guess it like mirrors, yes, but at the same time, it was like, because he doesn't always lead with, this is the character we're following. You're just like reading and they'll be like, oh, okay, we're back with this character or these characters. And then it's just a lot of back and forth. Like if this had been a film or, like a visual format, it would have been super annoying.
I was just thinking that'd be an excellent.
Yeah.
Same thing.
I love that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It is very jarring to get constantly shoved in other people's heads.
But I think that gives you like a real sense of the totality of the battle, in a way that if you just stuck with like 4 guys that survived or something, you wouldn't get.
Yeah, but for your preference, I mean, it is kind of annoying.
You have to reorient yourself every time, which depending on your narrative stamina.
It's also length.
It's also it's a
length
big
of
chapter.
each time you're with a perspective. Sometimes it's
like
just
it's
like
too short.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like a couple paragraphs, and then you switch, and then it's just
yeah.
Or the perspective of somebody who dies. Then he's crying about his mother
He skinned his knee.
skinning his knees.
So that I think really was one of the best pieces of the chapter. It like really set the tone into my soul when I read that part.
I think Steve lifted that almost straight from Saving Private Ryan. There's a
it
scene
does
where a
have
character,
that.
yeah, does almost exactly that.
It does have that feel. Yeah.
And he is, of course, heavily inspired by Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, I'm just saying, I love how the soldiers interacted with the children. And we had their internal monologue, which is just cursing the children into being angry at them. But then you could also hear them like just saying really nice things, like "You can do it."
Yeah.
Or
Keep going,
Smiles
keep
is
going.
just tolerating them, but they love her.
Where the guy that was like just threatening the kid that he was.
Yeah. You just see all sorts of
lizards
different
are gonna eat
parenting
ya.
styles. Yeah.
Somebody peed himself and blamed it on the kids.
Yeah. The kid part, that was unexpected for me. The little kids.
You know, it was unexpected for me the first time I read Sin. She just
Oh,
comes
yeah.
out of nowhere and it's like, oh, she's a high mage now.
Yeah.
That's cool.
She saved hundreds.
Yeah, she saved hundreds, and she
Earlier that
ended up saving Strings and the gang as well.
earlier in the chapter, do you remember Sin was like, I don't know, Sin was doing something
She
weird.
cut off a finger.
Yeah, and String said, "Oh, right, we had one of her back in the Bridge Burners." He's talking about sorry, so think about that.
You think she's being possessed?
I think
I don't think so. No.
that Sin does. She's not possessed, but you know how they're talking in this entire chapter about like, oh, there's an elemental being born.
Yeah.
I think that Sin just kind of absorbed a lot of that energy, and that's what gave her the high mage powers. Because before this, she didn't seem to have exceptional magical talent. She had like some, but I think she's like a sort of Mybe, and all of that fiery power, it had to go somewhere, and a lot of it went into the city and the air and burning through the warrens. But I think also a lot of it went to Sin.
Interesting theory.
Cannot prove that or disprove it.
How do y'all feel about Faradan Sort?
I like her.
Oh, yeah, I like her. I don't want to like her, but I like her.
Yeah,
What's the meaning? She saved Fid
she did.
by going against her commander, her direct command.
She deserts.
Yeah, I don't know. Judgment is still out there.
Is it because she tries to stomp on the rat too?
Well, yeah. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
I stomp on, spiders when I have shoes on. So, I get that.
I'm still upset about Joyful Union.
There's no way that she could have predicted that the scorpion was so beloved.
I mean,
Well,
normally I wouldn't.
I'm upset.
Yeah.
But it's because Joyful Union has, like, the symbolic meaning, and it's, like, important for the Malazan. But if it were any other scorpion, if it just were a scorpion, I wouldn't care.
Yeah, I know. And I was so mad at Erickson for that. Because I hate scorpions.
Okay,
And
speaking
he made me
of
feel so much for that scorpion.
speaking of hating Erickson, I don't actually hate him.
I don't either, to be clear.
But, like, at the beginning of this chapter, I had a really bad feeling. And it was very much like, because, we've read 5 books already. Like, I was like, okay, I know what Erickson is capable of and, like, what he will put his readers through. And so I just had, like, the worst outcomes. I was, like, trying to prepare myself. And I even, like, messaged you guys. I was like, Fiddler better not die. Because nobody is
I didn't
safe.
see that one.
But
It was there. Yeah.
that's a good thing, right?
So,
Like if you didn't feel like this, you wouldn't feel like you're supposed to.
I know, and it's not like I hate Erickson exactly. It's more of like, oh, how you would
very
do
very
this.
strong emotions. I get it,
Yeah,
but it ended better than you anticipated.
yes, yes, it did. So I just need to have like the worst, expect the absolute worst, and then I won't. I'll be like, oh, that was better than
That's
I
smart. Yeah.
Um, but the last time that I've had this this kind of visceral reaction to a book I was reading was Pierce Brown. Because that
High
guy
praise.
really just like there's no limit to what he'll do.
Mm.
Anyway.
So I did feel the same way, but after Egaton, I do have a feeling that Korab and Fiddler have plot armor.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like if they were not gonna die there, they're gonna die in the Crippled God. If they're gonna die.
Sure.
Like, I think that's just so now in the future when they're in peril, I'm like, are they gonna die here? And then I'm like, but Fiddler can't. Fiddler can't, right? And
He needs to make it to the end.
yeah, I feel like he's gonna be the only bridge burner that makes it to the end. Well, okay, Quickpin doesn't count. He's something more than a bridge burner, right? And so is Kalam. But
Yeah.
but Fiddler is the only like rank and file normal bridge burner.
What
that I
about
think is
Bottle?
just gonna make it all the way. He wasn't a bridge burner.
Oh, sorry, yeah, but I mean like the rank and file like soldier.
No, I'm just talking about the bridge burners.
Gotcha.
I think Fiddler is the one that's gonna carry all of them through to the Crippled God.
Yeah, I think
after
you've
he didn't
convinced
die
me,
here.
Yasna. I think that, well, like, no way Fiddler dies before he takes up a career fiddling, right? Kind of clicks his heels and goes out into the rooftops.
He needs a violin.
Yeah, he
But
needs a
I
fiddle.
did before the end of this. I was afraid because Erickson hinted that there's no reason why there should be a way out of these caves. You
Right.
know, and that scared the crap out of me. I was like, you would try to prove that point, wouldn't you, Steve?
Yeah, and they just die all there. They just
They
haven't
just ran
failed
out
to
of
escape
air
the
or
city.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's like that guy who went climbing face first, and then he got stuck, and then they tried to get him out, and they just couldn't, and then they
Oh.
hopped him up on morphine, and he died.
That's why you don't enter small holes when you're
Just-
spelunking.
Don't go in caves. They're death
I like
traps.
caves.
But you
Caves are
know, sometimes people don't have a choice because that's how they make their livelihoods, like miners.
That's true, and sometimes they have to escape a burning city. But if you have a choice, don't go into caves. Okay.
Oh, but I will say that don't trust my intuition on stuff like that necessarily because I also did not expect Truth to die. I thought he had plot armor through to the end of at least this book, if not the Crippled
Yeah.
God. I
Poor
was
Truth.
wrong about that, so I thought the whole Gessler squad would have it. Like
Part of
Gessler and
me-
Stormy.
Part of me still doesn't quite believe he's completely dead.
I know, same. I know.
There's like
I know.
a sentient piece of truth flesh out there that has his being and
Well, I mean,
a
like-
finger crawling along.
He was bronze too, in 3 different types of fire.
He was
Well,
annealed.
'cause- Like Hedge, you know, he's dead, but he's not like gone.
I was about to say that, but then I was like, wait a minute. How far did we get with the Hedge stuff? Does she know that yet?
Yeah.
So I'm
Here.
glad you said it.
He talks to Fiddler.
Yeah, and he was in book 4. And he talks
And he
to
talks
Quran
to
later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm like still holding out a little bit that Truth will still
Yeah.
come back in some form.
He'll
Right.
be their spirit animal.
Well, and there's this hint at the end of Deadhouse Gates about Gessler and the rest being ascended now, or being close to ascension at that point, and it's been like however long since then. But, you know, just because they're ascendant doesn't mean they can't die anyway. But
Oh.
also, it's like, what happens to ascendants when they die? Do they go through Hood's Gate? Or do they just dissipate? Or do they go somewhere else? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know any of these things.
We in chapter 6 we did get the best explanation of ascendance that we've gotten so far. And you know what it is? You're harder to kill and you're more powerful. I love it. It feels like Steve maybe just got like frustrated about people asking him questions. He just like snuck that little bit in, so
Yeah.
it's just like stop bothering me. It's a very vague category.
We also got a clearer, quote unquote, clearer definition of Warren, which is the whole blood is power, power is blood, and the Warrens are, you know,
Cruel's blood.
Cruel's blood, and it's powerful, and that's what they're drawing on.
We got
That's
that
also
in,
quite
like, Memories of
metaphorical
Ice.
too.
Yeah, but this was like a lot clearer. It's not as much you having to decipher.
The phrasing, yeah, is
Yeah.
a lot more matter of fact. Do we have anything else to say about chapter 7?
I mean,
I got a couple quotes.
so much freaking happened.
Yeah,
It was exciting
it was exciting,
and harrowing
It was,
and funny towards the end.
I always have a thing when, like, I'm told that how many troops are in an army, and you start seeing them die. It like
Yeah.
really bothers me when the number takes below 10,000.
They didn't have 10,000 to start with to go in.
No, they didn't. No, they were raided by Leoman before that. But still, like, there's something in my brain that just gets upset when an army isn't just at full strength.
Oh, well. Poor Pella. So, here's the other thing. Like, this is not the first time we've gotten a perspective, like, as the character is dying.
Mhm.
And it's just so, like, the impact doesn't lessen every time it happens. And just, like, you as a writer, when you're writing this, like, what kind of mindset are you in to, like, write this stuff? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
We've known Pella a long time.
We will probably have an extended conversation about this when we reach Dust of Dreams.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you gotta, like,
Yeah.
play it out in your head, and, like, the way he writes it, like,
I
you would
imagine
have to
he's very
feel it.
emotional when he's writing it.
Yeah.
Um,
There was, like, a couple things that I think Erickson did really well in this chapter is, like, you know, the real dangers of, like, explosives and fire. Like, explosives and fire don't care which side you are on. They're gonna do what they're meant to do. And, like, even I can't remember who, like, thought, I think it was like an internal monologue. It was like, warrior and soldier, the fire held to no allegiance. It was devouring everyone. And that was just like, makes you even more helpless. It's like, I'm angry at fire? Or, you know? Yeah.
Yep. The world is so cruel. Yep.
Who knew olive oil could do that?
Right?
Have you ever been burned when you're cooking because the oil was too hot?
Yeah, but I mean, still, it's a lot of olive oil.
Yeah, there's a big difference between like being burned while cooking and just like buildings exploding, right?
Well, yes,
And
but
the
like
entire city
even
being on
just
fire.
like that little
Yeah.
bit was like is painful. So
And the buildings were soaked with oil.
The danger of
Oil.
explosives bit, I liked how it was so serious, but also was played for laughs at times. There's a running gag in the chapter, which provides much needed comic relief in such a heavy, grim chapter, where the sappers are counting down to
Oh,
the
yes.
explosion, and it's always like at 8 or 5 when the explosion happens.
Yeah.
You only counted to 8.
He was giving him
I
hope.
had-
I need yeah.
right. It happens again later. It's not as comical, but it still happens again.
Or like
think-
when they were in the temple or something,
Yeah,
right? And it was like Hellion was like, "Oh, do you still have that cracker?" And then every sapper was like, "What?"
I think we would be remiss if we did not at least acknowledge the true tragedy of this chapter. The olive oil merchants will potentially never financially recover from this. Think of the lost product just thrown away.
Aren't they like carrying their couches across the desert right now, basically?
Yeah, that too. Oh man, the financial loss.
I
I
mean,
think they got bigger things to worry about than
I don't think
whether or
that's
not
the
they'll
case.
profit from the.
Do we want to talk about honey dreams or wait for Lady
Oh yeah,
Susan's
the honey
question?
dreams.
honey dreams.
Yeah, we're talking about honey dreams. Yeah, Lady Sweden, we're doing this for you. I like the Crump stream for the funny side the most because the god of the Mottwood, everyone knows his tricks. He's not funny anymore, but he thinks he is, and I really like it. It's hilarious to me. On the serious side, Smiles. Go
Oh my
Smiles.
goodness. That was
Oh,
so heartbreaking.
I love Smiles. I just
Oh,
want to I just want to give her a hug and tell her it's okay and be her friend because
No, she doesn't
she
smile.
doesn't have friends and she hates men
yeah.
because they've just been cruel to her.
I don't blame her.
Right?
Mhm.
Korik is also cool.
Hmm.
I liked Gessler's.
Which
I
one was
forget what
his?
Kessler's is.
We read it in Memories of Ice. Is the death of Treach at the hands
All
of the
right.
Kachanchamal.
Hmm.
And he kind of teased us a little bit with that one because Gessler was like, I feel like the stuff before he died was important too, and then it's just like dot dot dot.
No, it wasn't really important, right? Like Treach was just a guy, just ran around, tiger, like Charlie Sheen.
I like Balms with all the disgusting gods in Dalhan.
Oh yes, there's the dung beetle god that saved him from the snake god, and then what was the god that came after?
I don't remember, but it was
So
funny.
bizarre.
Yeah, he was going to be the champion of the dung beetle. You got to play around with poop
Paul
all
was
day.
like, what twisted mind came up with all these gods?
We worshipped
Yep.
him.
The one I related to the most was Fiddler. And he was like, I don't want to wake up. I don't want to open my eyes.
Fair.
And it specifically like everybody wants him to make a decision. I'm like, yep, that's my job. And it's very stressful.
And then Hedge comes along, kicks him around. It's like, stop lying around. You have people to save.
Exactly. You got to keep going. You got to take us with you right to the end. But what's the end?
So that is also a meta reason why I think Fiddler makes it to the crippled god because
Yeah.
Hedge basically says he does.
You got to take us to the end. But he doesn't say
Right.
what the end is.
There are both beginnings and endings to Malazan.
Mm,
Yeah. I do like how Steve isn't afraid to insert meta-narrative stuff every now and again, like he does most obviously with Krupp, who is not even really a character in the world.
yeah.
Udnas too.
Udnas to a lesser extent, like he still like goes around and suffers, and you know people punch him and stuff.
Oh, I
like,
meant meta narrative.
Oh yeah,
Udnas
like-
critiques fantasy a lot.
yeah, but like we talked to Steve and he said that Krupp like he doesn't exist in the world, right? Essentially, he's he sort of floats on top of it.
You know what I am kind of surprised by and also missing? Where the heck is Hood?
He's everywhere.
Hood is everywhere.
I know, like, there was a character who was like, Hood, don't look at us right now. Like, don't look at us tonight. Look away. And I was like, oh, yeah. Where's Hood? We haven't seen him in a while.
Yep. For Yugatan specifically, it was a very dangerous place for everyone to be for that night. So I actually maybe this is one of the times when Hood isn't actually there, because all of the ghosts at Yugatan have been burned away apparently.
Yeah,
Yeah, Hedge confirms that Hood wasn't there
I know.
when he talks to Fiddler.
He knew to stay away.
Don't worry, you'll get to see Hood again, Panda.
Okay.
Soonish.
Yeah, I mean like he's been with the Bonehunters the entire time in the form of Roach, right? Or has it been?
I don't buy it.
Highly suspicious that those dogs managed to survive.
I mean, Mappo gave him the vials, the life-saving
Convenient
vials.
excuse.
Uh-huh.
He used his last potion of healing.
Yeah. Any last words for chapter 7?
I got quotes
Okay.
from Korab.
Me too. They're probably the same ones.
I'll take the short one then. Compassion existed when and only when one could step outside oneself to suddenly see the bars from inside the cage. I think that's beautiful words. He was talking about apes, I believe, being kept in cages.
Mm-hmm.
I just liked when he's like, thus I die a wise man, not a fool. Is there any difference? I still die after all. No, there is. I can feel it. That difference. I have cast off my chains. I have cast them off.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And even trapped under Yugatan, he's free for the first time in his life. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot. I had two quotes I highlighted just to talk to you guys about them, and they were in chapter 6. Whoops.
Okay, I got a little bit more. Certainty was an illusion, a lie. Fanaticism was poison in the soul, and the first victim in an inexorable, ever-growing list was compassion. Who could speak of freedom when one's own soul was bound in chains?
Yep.
Steve is reaching out through the page and is like, learn the lesson of these books. This is exactly why he wrote Malazan.
I love Korak.
Question. Who do you think he's actually speaking to?
Everybody.
But
You're
yes,
talking about Korab or Steve?
Steve.
Okay.
Like, it's not just the author like saying these words, it's also the reader being able to actually like receive the
Mhm.
words, being open to receiving them. And so, you know, if you already are familiar with compassion and like you have compassionate tendencies or are a compassionate person, I don't think you're necessarily the person that he is speaking to. But then if you're already like you don't care, do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
So, um, I I understand what you're saying. I think that even if someone is naturally compassionate, it's very easy to lose your compassion, or like essentially turn it off in certain situations. And a lot of the time in Malazan, we get introduced to someone who we think is a villain, and traditionally, in a traditional book, would be a villain. But we get to see the other side of them and feel compassion, even if they might not be redeemed. And I think even if someone is compassionate, then they can forget that and they can villainize certain people thoughtlessly.
I'm still
And it's
guilty of
also
it.
easy to stop being a compassionate person because the world has been so cruel to you. And like in Malazan, like he really does not pull punches. And you do see people that have lost that, even if they were once compassionate people, then they just like the world has been so cruel to them that they've hardened and become cruel. Um,
But also, it's not just a matter of like, oh, there's like compassionate people over here and people that aren't compassionate over here.
sure.
It's like fanaticism is its and the fanatical certainty is a filter for compassion. It can like it's a negative filter that can wipe your compassion away for whoever the enemy is or
Like give you
whoever
reason not to be compassionate.
for yeah, but it doesn't mean you're not compassionate altogether. It's like a filter. Like these people deserve compassion over here. These people don't because they're the Malazans and they eat children.
Tribalist
And
miscancer.
and you know, and Erickson. So who is he talking to? You know, I think if you put this at the beginning of Gardens of the Moon, he's only talking to people who are ready to receive it. But he just spent 6 books priming us to receive it. You know, because we're going through all of these things and we're seeing characters that err on different sides of that spectrum and have different levels of that fanaticism filter on them. Uh, and we're viewing it through a filtered lens of fiction. So it's not us. He's not attacking us. He's preparing us to receive the message by having it be these other characters that are removed from us and from the real world that we can like process it all through. And it's like this long. I mean, we've been reading this book for over a year now. You know,
The
like
series, yeah.
it's yeah, right, the Book of the Fallen, right, and it's yeah, that's a lot of prep before you drive home the overt message here, right? But also, like, one last thing, I'll get off my soapbox. He also doesn't present it black and white either, because, like, here it's presented black and white, but we see that there are limits to Steve's compassion, even towards
Mm-hmm.
these villainous characters, with, like, uh, you know, the vengeance
Midithal.
Karsa gets on Bidafal. Yeah, right. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not the only example, but it's a very stark one. So, you know,
You know who
anyway.
also spoke in metaphor and fantasy so that his followers could better understand his message? Jesus.
Yes.
I just want to say that, piggybacking off what Ashman said, everybody knows, practically speaking, everybody knows compassion is important. but like Yasna said, it's easy to filter it out for certain situations. And like I've read this book series X many times. Before I started reading it, I could emphatically say that I was a less compassionate person, less empathetic in general. And each time I do, I learn more and I become more introspective and try to, cut off those parts of myself. So I think he's just talking to me.
That's true. He wrote the book for me.
So like, yeah, everybody knows compassion is important, but it's not easy to always understand when you're not being compassionate, if that makes sense.
Or why it's so important.
Yeah.
Before I read this, I think I've gone over this. Like, I had a very rigid view of justice, like eye for an eye sort of thing. And yeah, this series like really showed me how monstrous that can be. And the line in Kovian has his memory in Memories of Ice about how compassion is priceless in the sense that it should be given freely. I think that's
But
a
Erickson
lesson.
himself has said he doesn't fully buy into it. Kofian's
He doesn't know if
philosophy
he
there.
totally agrees with Itkovian there, but I think he does agree with the line about compassion. Maybe not Itkovian's radical acceptance of everybody and their
That idea will be explored later on in the series.
yeah.
I guess I'm doing a little bit of reflection, like, okay, when I first started reading this series till now, like, how has this series changed me in any way? And I, I'm just kind of like,
It's
maybe.
it's entirely possible that you didn't need to learn the lesson. I'm only speaking for myself when I say I needed to hear it, but yeah, there are people that just know this intuitively, I think.
Well, I mean, I'm
So
not gonna
maybe you're
say I'm
just
the
an
most.
exceptionally good person
No, no,
then.
no, 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 no. I'm not gonna say those words, or think that. It's more of like I think uh other things in my life have given me these lessons, and so therefore it's not like this series is having as much of an impact on me.
Hmm.
Um, and I am reading this later in my life than you and Huron fan read them, so that could be also something playing into it.
Hmm.
Uh, Another thing I would say about when to filter out compassion is Erickson has a lot of protagonists who have to carry out objective based actions that have consequences that sometimes in order to carry them out in an organized way, like particularly soldiers, they
Hmm.
have to like put aside those concerns as things are in motion, and like those characters often struggle with like when to step back and do the compassionate thing and
That's
set
fair.
aside that mentality of like we can't think about those things, we have to just do the thing and
Hmm.
achieve our objective because there's a higher compassion or a higher goal or a higher directive that we have to push to get through this situation. That means we have to ignore those concerns for now. So there's
Well,
like this
and
sort of
for
like,
them, yeah, for them it's like life or death a lot of the time.
but in real life, I think that, I mean, for me personally, I've looked at a lot of situations that are like, that looked at or participated in a lot of situations where it may not be necessarily quote unquote life or death, but it's like, it is in a more like abstracted way of like, oh, we have to get this thing done because that's like food
Mm,
on the table for this number of people or
sure.
whatever, and therefore anybody in our way, we can't have compassion for them because we have to put food on these people's table, right? And so
Yeah.
in having that movement in between, like where you can consider everybody's humanity and where you have to like for the humanity of the people you're protecting or trying to advance their interests or against the people who are trying to deprive those people of humanity. You know what I'm saying? Like so for me the message is kind of like, I don't know, it hits home in a lot of ways because like I've been in that mode of like on the extreme end where I'm just like for the greater good, screw these people. And then on
Mm.
the other opposite end of like considering everything and like, you know, having to move between those two things and yeah, things like that. Because if you just are always in the like consider everyone and blah blah blah, you can't like do the necessary things you have to do to struggle to survive in our world or in the Malazan
Um,
world.
uh, I think that Steve does not end up on any side of the on any side firmly of the issue. I think he has said as much, but like um, he's exploring all these different avenues through these books, and like he says with Korab here, certainty is a poison. So I think the most important thing that he wants us to take away is just be willing to reconsider things. Don't rigidly hold to any one belief, because once you do that, you can lose sight of like you're human. You can be fallible, and you probably missed something. So just be willing to re-examine like literally all the time.
Very postmodern of him.
Ah, yeah, that's true. Shall we move on to chapter 8?
Yes, please. Oh, that's mine.
Yep, you have a summary.
Ganos arrives on 7 cities to find it's racked by plague. He meets a jag hut. She needs a bath. There just happens to be a new bath at Uraku. Quickben, Klom, and Stormy have a meal in the Imperial Warman. The survivors of Yagatan get bit by a rat, and they like it. Herb and Hellion do some S&M stuff, and they all wonder if they can catch up with the army to escape the plague. And finally, Ganos has a talk with the Birchburners, and he wants to summon the Daragoth.
Bom, bom, bom.
This chapter's cool. I really liked Perrin's flashback to when he was inside the Azath house with Raced, and he had the conversation with Krupp, and I really needed that.
Yes.
It's funny because when reading the conversation, it doesn't seem to me that Krupp actually told him that much that was useful. Like he essentially said, there's stuff going on at 7 cities, and you might be too late to stop some of it.
But you should still go.
Yeah, but you should still go. And then that kind of kicks him into motion, and he starts. He continues to research.
He also attests to his boundless faith in Genoa's, and then immediately says that his faith is completely shaken and Genos is kind of an idiot. And like the same.
Yes. But also, he kind of gives Ganuus a like hint of what to expect once he gets there, because he tells him like, you must walk the singular shadow between their crub, utter such dread words between life and death, the wavy blurry metaphor so callously and indifferently trespassed by things that should know better, which I mean is still kind of vague, but
Yeah. Definitely life and death, because he said for Hood's sake. Krupp's like, yes, indeed, for Hood's sake.
yes.
Poor Hood.
So I'm gonna see Hood in the next section.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you've seen Hood already.
Oh my
He's shown up in every book so far.
Oh yes.
Of course.
Okay.
Except for Midnight Tides.
Maybe he was hidden there.
That's true. He was probably Bug.
Probably hiding in the tides.
But Bug pretends that he's revealed to be male, but he's actually Hood. It's like 3, 4, 5 dimensional chess.
Oh god.
Inception.
Sure.
Those are all my notes for the chapter.
Well, Stormy tells Kalam and Quickben about how he got the Talana sword, which was a nice callback to Lagana Breed. But during that whole scene where, Stormy was making a lot of sense, at the end of that section, Kalam looks suspiciously at the empty chair. I'm like, there must be somebody there.
Who's the
Right?
chair for? Who's this
don't know.
throne for? This shadowy throne.
I mean, that my thought was like, okay, Shadow Throne was probably there listening to find out like what do these people know. That's it.
Either him or Cotillion.
I don't think it's Cotillion. The other one was like, okay, maybe it's Iskrull Puss, but that's pretty quiet for him.
And
I don't
Iskrull
think
Puss is the next
Iskrull Puss
chapter.
would go to the trouble of setting up a feast for someone. He might get the mule to do it, though.
His servant.
He also couldn't sit and quietly listen to anyone.
That's what I was thinking. It was like, he's too.
Or maybe he could. He's very elaborate with his assumptions. We get more information about the errant here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool, right?
Its enemy
we get-
is ennui and stagnation.
Yep. we get a hint as to how the power of gods works. God's work. Yeah. He essentially, way back when, he got really tired of everyone and their conflicting desires, and they're all calling on him and saying, I need you to kill this person, and the other person's like, I need you to kill that person. And then he essentially just retreated into being an arbitrary avatar of chaos to get out of it, which I guess is fair. He didn't want his mouth filled with blood all the time. That doesn't sound like a pleasant experience.
This is still about the errant.
Yep.
Speaking of Mouth of Blood, I really enjoyed how quickly Bottle went from worshipping Yagathon to cursing at her.
Yeah. That's really the cycle of all believers, right?
So, like, first of all, this whole plague thing, too real.
Oh, right.
Too real.
Whale.
It's a
How
little
dare
more.
you.
It's a little more virulent and deadly, but yeah,
A lot more.
Yeah, a lot more.
Definitely more
But
deadly.
still,
Definitely more deadly. I don't know, but more virulent.
it's like every single person that's not.
Yeah,
an
isn't
attendant.
everybody dying?
Yeah, it's everyone.
Yeah, no, it is
But-
more deadly. But
Yes,
it's not
more
necessarily-
deadly. Okay. So, the bite from the rat. Is that
It's
a
just a rat.
vaccine?
It's
Oh
just
my
a rat.
god, I knew you were gonna say that.
It's just a rat.
The rat is a
No.
rat.
Which, if
and
that
they're
is
making
a
this rat into
vaccine,
something that is not.
if that is a vaccine, that is pretty ironic because
Well, they talked earlier about how blood is power, and they're giving power to this being that saved their lives. It's just a type of
sure.
It's I would say it's just human instinctive ritualization of mundane
ritual.
things, leading to those things becoming supernatural, or in this case, not supernatural. It's just a rat.
I mean, they didn't have a choice. Didn't the rat just bite them?
No,
Yeah,
they
but it became.
lined up and they like pet the rat, and the rat bit them all in turn.
It didn't start
I
like that though. Like they only lined up to pet the rat, and then the rat started biting them, and then it became a ritual.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is how belief systems form.
I don't know. We'll see if any of these characters die from this plague.
Or from the rat bite.
Yeah.
I don't think the rat bite's gonna kill him. Speaking of rats, though, so you know how Paran was gonna like ask Hedge to summon the Daragoth? It reminded me of like mongoose, the whole like mongoose being an invasive species in Hawaii.
Yes,
Yeah,
that it reminded me of that too.
yeah.
Mulgora
Okay, so
releases freshwater sharks as well in this chapter.
So if listeners don't know about mongoose in Hawaii, basically a long time ago, Hawaii, sugarcane, very, profitable crop, but rats kept biting and eating the sugar canes. So somebody was like reading this research about how in India they use mongoose to take care of rat problem. So then they decided to introduce mongoose into Hawaii. Turns out rats are nocturnal, mongoose are not nocturnal. They did not cross paths, and so now they have both being there, and now mongoose are invasive species.
So that's not okay. So it didn't make me think of that. What it made me think of, and this is what I thought you were getting at, is a similar thing, but where like the predator does eat the introduced predator does eat the prey, but then has no natural predators, so it becomes its
there's
own
that too.
problem, and then you have to like release another thing. So
Yep.
like, yeah, the nameless ones were like, Mapotrel's a problem, and we need to use Icarium to deal with another problem, so we'll release this predator. And then Piran's like, oh, but this predator's a problem, so we'll release these other predators.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Simpsons did this best, I think. In The Simpsons, they accidentally introduce a species of lizards that overrun the town. It turns out the lizards ate the pigeons that were infesting the area, so that's good. But now they're overrun with lizards. Well,
Yeah.
their plan is to release a bunch of snakes, which will eat
Oh,
the
of
lizards.
course.
Then they'll be overrun with snakes. However, there's a new breed of snake-eating gorilla that they're going to introduce. They're going to be overrun with gorillas, right? No, that's the beauty of it. When winter comes around, this gorilla simply freeze to death.
Hmm.
So they figured it out an end to the
Figured
cycle.
it out.
So the Jaggets will come and freeze the Daragoth to death.
Or to stagnation.
It's possible.
Mm-hmm. Anything else for this chapter?
We can go chapter 9, yeah?
Chapter 9. Veed lies to poor Icarium. Hiborik talks about weird religious stuff while Solara complains about pregnancy. Karsa goes hunting. Huss finds Mappo, and Megora heals him with the combined powers of urine and the moon. We found out Cotillion saved Yeel. Poor Pearl.
I don't freaking care about Pearl.
Oh,
He is not good. He's a jerk.
I like Pearl.
I
I
liked
felt
Pearl
really
in
bad.
this part of the book.
He's, well, like, his arc so far in the book is, like, him and Lestari have kind of broken up, and he's become, like, a sullen little child who is now doing drugs.
Wasn't
He thought his love died.
That is,
Crying.
No, he probably was doing drugs after he thought Lestari died.
no,
Or maybe he was just sad.
no, that is a misreading. The guy who thinks he's doing drugs thinks that because he assumes Pearl has no feelings because he's an assassin.
It's true. He does
He's
have red eyes.
crying.
He is crying.
Yeah.
'cause
Broken up about losing his girl.
Yeah.
He really loved her,
also-
even though he liked to pretend like he didn't.
he was a deadbeat. He was a deadbeat boyfriend. Lestari could sense that, and she broke up with him because of it.
Well, she's gonna have to choose.
That's right. She is gonna have to choose.
Maybe. Well, I hate Terralock Veed more than anything right now.
Okay, so what had really happened is Veed like manipulating Icarium to make Icarium think he's the one that's been with him this whole entire time, but like to
Mhm.
what end is he like wanting Icarium to kill the whatchamacallit demon thing?
Deriga? Or the
No.
Dejun Nabral?
Want Karian
Yeah.
to kill something.
Raffo, but yes, he's definitely manipulating Icarium to do something. Most likely killing.
Unleash that rage.
Yes.
Grr. Terror like Veed now has a Hulk.
Mm.
But he's
Yeah.
disgusting, and Mappa was my boy.
Yeah, Veed sucks, and I really want Mappo to get Icarium back.
But
What is Mappo gonna do when it gets
Mappa's all better.
Icarium
He's
back?
not dead. That was nice.
Yeah.
The
I really liked the marital conflict between Iskarl Pust and Megara,
Mm-hmm.
and his ridiculous, insane commentary on the differences between gender and the sexes,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
which
my
is
quote.
like, yeah, that's one of mine too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, first he talks about the he can't understand the woman's language. Megara is singing the woman's language. It's gibberish to him, just as the man's language is gibberish to her. That's because the man's language is gibberish.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fact that men don't need words, but women do. We have penises after all. Who needs words when you have a penis? Whereas with women, there are two breasts, which invites conversation, just as a good behind presents perfect punctuation, something every man knows. What's wrong with the world? You ask a man and he says, don't ask. Ask a woman and you'll be dead of old age before she's finished. Ha. Ha ha.
Which is so ironic for
It's
him.
very ironic.
He
It's
can't
very,
shut up.
very ironic.
But you know what? It's also kind of meta.
Yeah.
In that Erickson, like, cut his teeth on writing short stories.
Mhm.
He is also male, and he's written like one of the most verbose like
Oh, yeah.
series.
Like all the
fantasy.
really big epic fantasy series besides War of Light and Shadow are all just written by men.
Yeah.
They clearly have a lot to say. It's hilarious.
Yeah, pattern of shadow on light.
Also, Krupp.
Robin Hobb.
Krupp is also very verbose and a
Krupp
male
is not
character.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like there aren't really any female characters that I can think of that just jabbers on in the series.
Yeah,
Well,
he's kind of just like doing the 1980s stand-up comedian routine of like, oh, I hate my wife. She won't shut up.
But and it's I think it
God.
hits different because it's in Malazan, because like in our world there are people who believe crazy stuff about the differences between men and women because we have like patriarchy as an established like thing in society. It's like a globalized thing. But then in Malazan, there are essentially no real gender differences, right? And no like hierarchy. So only crazy people like Pust believe crazy things like this, unless you're like there's like backward tribes in some places that do in Malazan, right? So it just hits different because it's like actually funny because it is like a mirror held up to that kind of humor. So you're like laughing at the humor, but you're also laughing at the humor, if that you know what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I actually I actually read this part to some friends as I was reading it, and they're like, "What are you reading?"
Just like horribly sexist trash. Come on,
And
Panda.
I had to explain like, okay, it's just this character. Da, 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 da. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah, no, that there's like no winning with that, right? Unless they
I don't
read the
think I
whole
sold
series
the series
themselves.
to them.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's sexist, but it's funny because he's not really serious about it. Or you're not supposed to take him seriously. He does show up for several books though, and he talks a lot.
He's not exactly evil.
He's he does just kind of like curb stomp those monsters.
The
Pretty easy.
Digimon Brawl.
Yeah.
They're
I
all
love
getting their
that.
asses kicked.
Yep.
Aren't they supposed to be like?
Yes,
Yep.
they're supposed to be.
I love that about this series because you're told over and over again that like the old races and the old gods are like these big bad mean things. And then whenever one of them like comes back after not being around for thousands of years, they're like, "Oh right, my reign of terror was about to begin," and they immediately just get curb stomped by everything, and especially mortals. Like, it's one of my favorite tropes in Malazan. It starts with Gardens of the Moon with Raced, and it just keeps going, and it's so fun. I love it.
Like these beings are legitimately very powerful, but guess what? Like bombs exist now, and you can just bomb them.
Yes.
Which is hilarious.
Also, we got to see why Shadow Throne might keep his girl Pust around, because he's like this badass mage, and there is no indication of that up until this point.
He is doing what he's told too.
Yeah, and it does. Yeah, it like totally fits with Shadow Throne's persona, because Shadow Throne himself, if he wasn't a god or an emperor, like he probably wouldn't think much of him. He just would be like an insane guy who's talking about nothing. But yeah, he's not an emperor / god for nothing. And
My quote is also from Past, and he's yelling at the mule because the mule's not doing what he wants, and he threatens to kill it with kindness and then punch it when he's surprised. He said, "No mule can match wits with me. Oh yes, many have tried, and almost all have failed."
So you guys got my 2 quotes for the chapter. Now I
There
have
we
no
go.
quotes.
Yeah. Oh, I love his girl best.
He
Very
is
good.
the best.
And when he's arguing with Mogara, she's like, "No, I don't need you here tending to
Mappo.
Mappo. Just set up the camp." He's like, "I already told the mule to set up the camp." And she's like, "It's a mule." It turns around.
The camp is set up.
The camp is set up. The mule's eating out of its bag of oats.
And she has ties with the moon goddess, we learn, and then she ran away when somebody noticed.
Well, she's all okay. So that's what Ardata.
I say
is?
Ardata, but yeah.
Ardata.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's also connected to Jakaraku, right? Jakaruku?
The destroyed continent.
The mostly destroyed continent.
Okay.
That was from Memories of Ice.
Yeah,
That's when it's originated, yeah. She shows up in the novels of the Malazan Empire.
If she weren't like spider aspected whatever thingy, I would like her more. I do
Really?
like her, but gross.
I figured you'd think she's a little crass.
I mean, yeah, but I did get a chuckle out of it. I mean, just imagining what that would look like is pretty
picking
funny.
tiny hairs off her head. The very few.
She
Yes.
shimmies around the stones, peeing on them.
Crab-like, yeah. Another funny part is Karsa and the veterans and telling Samar like, "Oh, you're gonna be the bait," and then he just goes and does everything himself.
Yep. Yeah, he kills the 2 bulls easily. Like not even
Well,
No
he
sweats
kills
were
one
broken.
bull and a cow.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, the other bull runs away.
Yeah.
They had a good conversation too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nothing new, but it's good stuff.
Samara's like, he's done this before, telling people to witness.
And then she sarcastically offers to have sex with them.
Right. And he's like, I mean, if you wanna.
If you want, yeah. She doesn't really have anything to say to that.
How much of a joke was it, though?
I don't think women are ever fully joking when they say that, right? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I can only speak for myself. No.
Yeah, there we go.
Are we good?
Yeah, we can go to listener questions.
Oh, is that me? Sorry.
It looks like it.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Listener questions. Red Army Ian asks, where is Egoten in the list of most memorable chapters? Oh,
Number one for me so far.
so far.
Number
Yes,
one.
number one.
He specifically didn't ask it to me, so I'll refrain from my long answer
Okay,
that I would
fine.
otherwise give.
All right.
It's not number one for me. Number one for me is probably the confrontation between Sita Kurokwan and the Warlock King in Midnight Tides. But it's up there. It's like top 5 for sure. It's one of the pivotal moments of the series that like everyone talks about on the forums.
I'm
Yeah.
more in. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm more in Ash's camp. I don't think it's number one for me. I might have to sit with it a little more, but like Memories of Ice, that ending battle part, that was
Mhm.
more impactful
Black
than this.
Coral. Yep.
Yeah.
So, I think it's number one for like at the time that you're reading it. For me, this one hit the hardest at the time. But what I really like about the earlier battles in the series is how at the time they're kind of flashes in the pan almost, or some of them are. And even the ones that are really serious, you're unpacking them for like books and books and books. Like
Mhm.
people, I still don't know if I understand everything about the Siege of Pale, but the bulk of that information came out over the course of Gardens of the Moon, Dead House Gates, Memories of Ice, and even a little bit in House of Chains. And still I'm not sure I'm 100% on it. And then like the Chain of Dogs, the characters are still processing that in book 6. And Black Coral still processing it several books later. I'm sure Egoton will be the same way, but for me,
Yeah.
like, yeah, so I guess like I don't know, probably the Chain of Dogs is the bigger one for me, but like added to that, like everything that built up to it and all the processing that's happened over the 4 books, like up to this point, versus like Egoton, it's like while you're in it, it's 4 hours long or 3 hours long if you're a fast reader, and it just goes on and on and on, and you have that sinking feeling like from beginning to end with very little relief, and even that relief, it's like the nervous chuckle while you still feel terrible and are just like going through the
I did
trauma
curse.
of it.
I did curse a lot while I was reading this chapter.
Yes. Same.
So yeah, this is. Oh, let me get on my history soapbox. This is how history works, right? We're still processing the events of World War One, and like arguably still events before that. You can still draw like very
Yes.
direct lines. Steve understands his history. Good job, Steve. And just for like this moment specifically, it is, I would say, the defining moment of the Bonehunters, this army. And they didn't really have something before this that they could lean to as like their founding myth, but now they kind of do.
I see what you
survived,
mean.
yeah.
So
Okay.
Egoton, not defining as much as founding. So it's like Raraku for the bridge burners.
Yeah.
Well, like they'd already been around a long time before this. They had fought in battles, but like this is what makes them, this is the moment that defines them, as opposed to the other Malazan armies.
I see what you mean. Cool. All right, next question from Dusty Strings. During the conflagration, there are hosts of characters who really shine. Who had one of your favorite moments? I mean, we talked about like favorite moments from the Honey Dreams, but overall, what stood out?
Sin. She just like everyone around is dying, and she comes out like very close to a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
She is a messiah figure right now, in this chapter. So like for that reason alone, she stands out to me more than the others because everyone else is they're still doing soldier things, and a lot of them are dying and being miserable. So like she is the most distinct from everyone else in my opinion.
But Bottle did so much to save them.
Yeah.
He's
For
not my
me,
favorite though.
the my favorite moment in the chapter was when Korab was dragging Fiddler, and they had their conversation about why he had to save him, and then Gessler comes with the Gessler story.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gessler comes and saves them. He's like, it was like the
He
hardest thing I
goes
ever had to do.
back.
Yeah, he goes back, and he was like, you don't understand what I had to do.
I'm surprised you didn't choose the moment where Korab finds the children.
That's my answer to another question later.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I really have an answer to this one.
Honey Dream Salamander.
Pull my tail.
Pull my tail. Here, pull my finger. It'll be really funny.
I cut up my shins.
Yasin, do you have an answer?
The tension. I feel like the tension is like as it builds at the beginning, it's part of what really like sets the stage for how impactful everything else is. And I feel like a big key in setting up that tension is them like thinking they're gonna come up to the wall and they're gonna get like pelted with arrows and magic, like as they're trying to lay the bombs, which doesn't happen. But you have like this terrible sinking feeling, and you're wondering why it's not happening. And then the things go awry with the explosives. So like that scene really stuck out to me because it's like the beginning of like the horror feeling setting in.
Yeah.
And and also like I really like the skin knee thing. I know you said it was ripped from Saving Private Ryan, but like whatever. I haven't seen that movie since I was like 15. And
like that's not a criticism. Like, it's a good rip.
yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought it was really humanizing of and like kind of drove home like how bad this is for these people to go through.
I
And how they're
really
just people.
I really enjoyed the part where Bottle was going around telling all the sergeants about the meeting with the captain, because that was when I got to see like all the Malazan characters. It was just like all Malazan.
They're all
And
doing
you get
crazy things.
yeah, you get to see how they're responding and reacting, and how their leaders were leading. A lot of banter. So
Friendly boars.
There's my sort of favorite squad gets introduced sort of here. Dead Smell and Throat Slitter, two of my favorite characters from the
Like
this army.
Slitter.
They're so cool.
oh, Widdershins.
Widdershins.
Yeah.
I had to look up that word. Okay, next question from Livia. Was there any change in your attitude or feelings towards Leoman since we first saw him up until now? And why was it an extreme one? At least for her, it was. I was disappointed.
He's a real bastard.
I was like, really? This is where you're going with this? Okay, all right.
I never loved Leoman, so it wasn't that big. But I hated him first I read this. Now I'm not gonna say anything more or comment anymore. I'm just saying I don't anymore.
This is a horrible thing for him to do and a horrible thing for people to go through. And I immediately saw why everyone hates Leoman. I understand why he did it. He was sick of the fanatics, sick of them looking up to him. He wanted to be disconnected from all of it. Obviously, that's not an excuse, but like, I didn't come out hating him. But like, also, this was a horrible atrocity. Like, I'm not condoning his behavior at all. I'm just like, well, that sucks.
Something I was thinking about as we were reading this is like, thinking about if you were in Leoman's position, what would you have done?
Right. That was one of my things is like, I guess you could just die trying to leave without doing something like this. Like, get killed by your own people.
Like, do you consider him a coward?
I don't think he's a coward, but I think this is about the most morally bankrupt thing you can do. Um, like, I get it. He was sick of fanaticism and he wanted it just to kind of be over and to, like, do his own thing away from the apocalypse. But he still let himself get in this position in the first place, right?
Hmm.
And just kind of like burning down your responsibilities in a very literal way is not what adults do, or it's not what they should do. Like, you should deal with your problems. You shouldn't shoot your problems or burn them.
What would that concretely mean for him, though?
In this situation, I'm not sure. But fortunately, the scale of this atrocity is so high that like almost anything he did would have been better, like in an alternate situation. Maybe
Yeah, he
not for him
didn't.
personally, but like he
He
could have tried to rehabilitate the army, or like disperse it, or like whatever. I don't know. Those would all have had ramifications of their own. But like this was an evil act.
could he have done his trap without the fanatics actually being there?
Um, he did need them, and he did use them for this. And I think a lot of them did know what was
Like,
coming.
couldn't he
A
have
lot of
like
them
a really long rope as a wick?
did. Maybe, but he wanted them all to die. He wanted it to be the end.
But then he makes a deal with the Queen of Dreams.
Yep.
Like, I feel like that's just trading one, you know, it's like trading one cult for another.
Um, yeah, the Queen of Dreams is interesting in that she's like not super into cults, but like generally I agree. Like he's trading one mistress for another, like
Right.
in a sense. Yeah,
Okay.
kind of like hoping it'll turn out for the better.
I mean, I don't like really hate Leoman exactly. It's just uh I'm curious to see I'm more curious to see what the Queen of Dreams has planned because it seems like she's trying to save someone and what Lorik has to do with this.
Mm.
Okay, next question. So I'm gonna skip. Okay, from Lady Sweden, Yucatan or Coral? If you were forced to join one battle, which one? Oh my goodness.
Coral, easy.
Oral.
Burning alive is no one's idea of fun.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
Coral.
yeah. I would choose Coral too because um Rake was there for that battle.
At the end,
And like I knew that he's there somewhere, and with this one it's like there's no, I guess Sin is kind of the closest, but
yeah, she's no Animander.
no, she's not.
Yeah,
Does Yesna have an answer for this? Coral.
I don't want to burn. We're suffocating
Yeah.
Kay.
No, thank you. All right, that is all the questions we got. I did have one last thing that was kind of more general comment about Malazan. Like something about how we've talked about how Erickson writes in this not like so clear, straightforward way, and readers have to do a lot of work to figure out like what's important, what's happening, etc. And like for us, it's a collective, for readers, it's a collective experience to like do the work, and like for us on this podcast, we have each other to like bounce ideas off of, to talk through things, and that's what is gives us the bonding moments as people and as readers. But if you really think about it, it's also like kind of cult like.
One
yeah,
of us.
yeah.
Like the Van Lazen fans are, I don't know. I haven't interacted as much as you guys have.
Um, yeah, like I don't strongly identify with the fandom. I kind of just like the series and I like talking to people about the series. But yeah, there are certainly people who get more culty about it, I would say.
And I mean, I know I have drawn this comparison before in this episode, but it's like the Howlers for the Red Rising saga, like the really die-hard howlers are a bit cult-like. And I think there's quite a bit of parallels in terms of reading experience for Red Rising and for Malazan. I mean, Red Rising isn't necessarily as complex, or as long so far, but like the emotional impact is yeah, bonding the readers.
Yeah, I think there is a fine line to be walked between developing a community of like-minded people and developing like essentially a cult. And I think that's something that people should just keep in mind whenever they get really into something with other people, because humans are very susceptible to it. People who join cults are not generally stupid people. It's just there's something about the human brain that really likes being in a tribe, and this can be exploited.
I've been part of 2 cults. So
Yeah, and like obviously, Yasmin's not like a stupid person.
I've started 3.
So,
You've started 3?
no.
you make more money as a leader, but you have more fun as a follower.
I mean, there was that whole thread about like ignorance and innocence and everything too, which we didn't even talk about. Which anyway, this episode is already too long. So, are we good to wrap up?
Yeah, it's not like a super long episode though. I guess only like 2 hours, right?
Yeah, it's not that bad. It'll probably be less than 2 hours. It will be less than 2 hours.
It will
Yep.
be.
We'll just
Alright.
cut out all the segments of
Ashman
Yasmin
talking.
and me. Yeah, it'll just be Panda actually.
Who wants to listen to that?
I think everybody. I think that's the reason we have listeners in the first place.
Let's stop.
I thought it was really sweet how people on Reddit like us.
Oh, yeah.
I
Thank you
guess
for
we
the
should
kind
make a
comments, everybody.
Yeah, that was really nice to read.
Sorry, we haven't really been updating people, but yes, thank you for caring and listening.
Thank you for checking in on your neighbors.
Hey, you
And
guys alive?
And with that, concludes this episode. If you want to join our very slow read along and or contribute listener questions, check us out on the Legendarium's Discord. You can find the link on thelegendarium.com. Also follow us on Twitter at Green Team Pod for updates and fun times. Check out the Legendarium podcast for Wheel of Time, Cosmere, Lord of the Rings content, and so much more. Thank you to our panelists, Ashmon, Yasna as a Boy, and Huron Fan. I'm Befuddled Panda. Until next time. Bye.
See you later, everybody.
Bye-bye. Pew, pew.
See you.
Pew, pew. Cool.